people, welcome to Eclectic Movie Reviews and Updates. And today I am going to be reviewing The French Dispatch. The French Dispatch, the latest installment of the filmography of Wes Anderson, is pure cinematic joy. I love Wes Anderson. I remember the much younger days when I first discovered his movies, and the look of his movies inspired some of my drawings. I was a Life Aquatic member for Halloween one year. I even still have the traffic light hat. The French Dispatch as of today, the French Dispatch put the biggest smile on my face so far this season. It has everything from comedy, crime, romance, action, art, food, and politics. As far as the story, the movie is about a fictional magazine called the French Dispatch that is heavily inspired by the New Yorker. The structure of the story is designed like an issue of a New Yorker magazine. Some posters of the movie are even meant to look like a New Yorker cover. Beginning and ending with the journalists at work in their offices, don't worry, that's not a spoiler, the film takes us into three stories. The first is the concrete masterpiece, the second one is revisions on a manifesto, and the third is the private dining room of the police commissioner. These aren't retellings of New Yorker articles or biographies of New Yorker writers per se. Rather, they're heavily inspired by them. Bill Murray's character, Arthur Howitzer Jr., is based on Harold Ross, the co-founder of the New Yorker. The concrete masterpiece is loosely based on a six-part New Yorker profile of a controversial art dealer, Lord Duveen, whom Adrian Brody's character is based on. Revisions on a Manifesto is inspired by Mavis Gallant's coverage of the 1968 protests in France. I feel like this movie is being criminally undervalued. A 75% on Rotten Tomatoes is way too low. I'm sorry. I'm going to take this time to call out a really stupid narrative being formed on the internet right now that movie podcasters, bloggers, and YouTubers do not want to address. Before more and more cinephiles discovered Wes Anderson's work through the internet, it was cool to like his stuff. However, now that more people have discovered his movies through the internet, it's now considered too mainstream in film fan circles because they think they sound too basic for calling Wes Anderson one of their favorite directors. I kid you not, I have heard like 5 to 10 and podcasters and YouTube pundits recently saying, I'm not a big fan of Wes Anderson's movies like a lot of other people are. Too quirky. They say it in such a look at me, I'm so edgy kind of tone. If you like Wes Anderson, don't feel ashamed. Like, I don't understand. Who cares if you sound too basic? There's a reason why he's so renowned, because he's deserving of the acknowledgement. If he genuinely is not your cup of tea, which I can understand, like, when I saw The Last Duel, they showed a trailer for The French Dispatch, and there were these old people in front of me saying, like, Wes Anderson, he makes some crazy movies. He made this movie called Transylvania. I didn't like that one. They were really talking about the Grand Budapest Hotel, confusing it with Hotel Transylvania, but you get the point. Well, like I can understand that, to each one's own. However, if you're pretending not to so that you can sound contrarian and smart, you sound totally disingenuous. Anyway, let's get off of that. Alas, I'm now going to give 5 reasons why I think this movie is great. Number 1, the excellent ensemble. Most people associate the recent Wes Anderson movies with enormous casts. The French Dispatch has a brilliant ensemble. Benicio del Toro, Adrian Brody, Tilda Swinton, Léa Seydoux, Timothée Chalamet, Lena Kudry, she's new, I can't really pronounce her name, Jeffrey Wright, who I love, Matthew Amalric, Stephen Park, Bill Murray, Owen Wilson, and more. You've also got Willem Dafoe, Bob Balaban, Henry Winkler, Liev Schreiber, and Saoirse Ronan. They've got some short bits. They all were great amongst one another. The cast is fantastic with their line delivery and physicality. That is a testament to Wes Anderson's writing of the characters and story and directing of the actors. As far as the standouts, Benicio del Toro is absolutely hilarious as an imprisoned artist named Moses Rosenthaler in the segment The Concrete Masterpiece. And by imprisoned artist, I mean like an artist who's imprisoned, not like metaphorically imprisoned. Uh, Anyway, he has a messed up yet kind of sweet love story with the prison guard played by Leah Seydoux. Del Toro's character is a caged animal with artistic talents. He even does a growl, and his beard only makes him more animalistic. In a funny way, though. Oscar Isaac has gotten a lot of love for his beard in Dune, but I don't know. I think Benicio del Toro's beard in The French Dispatch beats it just by a wee bit. Also in this story, Adrian Brody is the funniest he has ever been as an art dealer, Julian Cadazio, based on Lord Duveen, as I've mentioned before. Timothy Chalamet and Lena Kudry also have adorable chemistry as Zeffirelli and Juliet in the segment Revisions on a Manifesto. That's one based on the about 1968 protests in Paris. Jeffrey Wright is fantastic as Roebuck Wright, a food writer in the second to last segment, the private dining room of the police commissioner. It's funny how he plays a character who also has the last name Wright. He brings so much pathos to this character. His character is supposed to be based on James Baldwin and A.J. Liebling combined. James Baldwin, of course, was a well-renowned African-American novelist, poet, and social justice activist. For those of you who do not know, A.J. Liebling, like Jeffrey Wright's character, was a food writer for The New Yorker who often traveled to Paris. Will DeGravio from Film School Rejects points out, according to his friend Mitchell, Liebling sometimes used a piece of bacon as a bookmark. I can't imagine treating my books that way, but certainly sounds like something a character in a Wes Anderson film might do. Also in that segment, Matthew Amalric's character and his son have a very tender relationship. I could go on and on all day about how great the cast is, but let's move on. Oh, also in that segment, there's a really cool animated car chase sequence that kind of remember like the McDonald's cartoons? It kind of I thought of the Hamburglar. Okay, let's move on to number 2. The visuals. You can't talk about a Wes Anderson film without at least mentioning the production design and cinematography. The production design here is immaculate. The film is partly in black and white and partly in color. The color scenes, just like all Wes Anderson's films, are vibrant beyond rainbow spectrums. Despite not having color, the black and white scenes still have their vibrancy due to the whimsical tone of the film. One reviewer said that it was possible they shot it part black and white and part color because magazines can be like that. I think for some budgetary reasons, magazines don't have all their pictures in color. I wish I could jump into the screen and walk into the different locations of the stories. As far as the sets that stood out, the design of the writing office for the magazine itself makes the workplace look like the opposite of boring. In other words, if I worked for the French Dispatch, I would look forward to going there each day. Not that I don't love my job, I love going to the library. Anyway, back on topic. The town in which Timothy Chalamet's character, Zeffirelli, organizes his revolutionary protest in Revisions on a Manifesto is beautiful. There's a really cool part where Zeffirelli climbs on some sort of like electrical tower and you see like cartoon electric signs. Number 3, Wes Anderson's love for cinema. Wes Anderson is clearly borrowing a lot from French cinema here, from Godard to Tati to Renoir. At a talk at the Film Society at Lincoln Center during New York Film Festival, Wes Anderson said that the Benicio del Toro storyline, Concrete Masterpiece, was somewhat inspired by Voodoo Safe from Drowning from Jean Renoir. There was an IndieWire article listing 32 movies that inspired the French Dispatch. It mostly included French films, but he listed a documentary that sounds really intriguing called Painter's Painting. Hearing that title, it definitely sounds uh, like that influenced the concrete masterpiece. Painter's Painting is available to rent for a couple dollars on Amazon Prime and Apple TV, but I would imagine it would be extremely difficult to find on physical media. It would be great if the Criterion Channel or Mubi had that. Um, I I believe that the list also included His Girl Friday and The Sweet Smell of Success. Um, Also, given how Revisions on a Manifesto centers around a student protest in 1968, I wonder if Wes Anderson was inspired by any uprising films from the counterculture era in the late 60s, early 70s. I did some research, and some of these titles include Riot on Sunset Strip from 1967, If from 1968, and Medium Cool from 1969. Of these three, I've only seen If, but I'm looking forward to watching the others. I haven't watched If in a really long time. I should revisit it. Number 4, it's got a lot of heart and is very inspirational. When you hear the tag journalism movie, one tends to think of dark and heavy subjects and nailing down the scumbags, as Mark Ruffalo's character in Spotlight says. This movie takes a rather optimistic look at the profession, and you, there are no and I'd say humanity in general. Although I may be I may be going too far with that. There are no real villains in the movie, except for maybe Adrian Brody's character, if you count that. Several say that Wes Anderson's films are light, whimsical, and twee. I would definitely agree when it comes to some of his more recent films. However, there are more dark things in his films than given credit for, particularly in his earlier filmography, and you still see it in some of his recent filmography. Um, to be honest, I think the main reason people say that is because of his color schemes. I mean, The Royal Tenenbaums is about a guy pretending he has stomach cancer so that he could spend time with his family. It's a dark comedy. I rewatched The Darjeeling Limited the other day, and in that film, for those of you who don't know, is about three brothers played by Owen Wilson, Adrian Brody, and Jason Schwartzman on a trip in India after the death of their father. Owen Wilson's character is recovering from motorcycle accident injuries. It is implied that it was a possible suicide attempt. Sometimes sad deaths of the most likable characters happen in his movies. Nevertheless, the stories in the French Dispatch capture the idiosyncratic beauties of life even under dire circumstances. Most importantly, journalists aren't portrayed as egotistical assholes looking for a hot story. Instead, Wes Anderson writes them as people who simply love their jobs. It's become cliche for critics and pundits to call it this, but that's how Wes Anderson is successful here in creating a love letter to journalism, The New Yorker, and French cinema. And the fifth and final reason why French Dispatch is great is it's just so darn original. I've never seen any movie structured like a magazine before. That's why it should absolutely get a screenplay nomination at this season's Oscars, whether it be for original or adapted. I think I read somewhere that given how original screenplay is going to be a very competitive category, they might fraud it into adapted, given that it is inspired by New Yorker stories. But I still love it to get in tech nominations like costume, makeup, production design, cinematography, and score. Um, I love this movie. Um, and I'm excited for Wes Anderson's upcoming movie, Asteroid City. That comes out next year in 2022 as um, as we know, and it has. I think it's supposed to have an even bigger cast. It's so far it's got Tom Hanks, Margot Robbie, Scarlett Johansson. Um, Let me just look up the cast list here so far. Um, okay, on Google it says Tom Hanks, Margot Robbie, Scarlett Johansson, Sophia Lillis, Liev Schreiber, Maya Hawke from Stranger Things, Adrian Brody, Tilda Swinton, Jeffrey Wright again. It'll be great to see him work with Jeffrey Wright again. Rupert Friend, Matt Dillon, Bryan Cranston, Jason Schwartzman, Tony Revolori, Jeff Goldblum, Fisher Stevens from Short Circuit, Hope Davis, um, and I think they added a couple of people. I think Stephen Park was just added. Um, uh, it's as far as on IMDb, it says the plot is unknown, rumored to be a love story set in Europe. I think they were filming it in Spain. From what I've heard. Uh, but it's been a pleasure sharing my review with all of you. I hope to share more movie reviews and poems with you all. You can follow me on Instagram at Eclectic Movie Updates or Positive Poems. You can also follow me on Letterboxd at Eclectic Movies. Um, anyway, thanks for watching. Uh, Be sure to like, share, subscribe. Goodbye for now.